That is straight from the album Love Like This, and I absolutely love it. Karibu sana to Feel Good Friday right here on the show. It is a new day. Hapa hivi kwenye new day. And of course, we are live on Ebru TV. And my name is Aziza Hashim. And kama kawaida, I promise you nothing short of 2 hours of straight up awesomeness. And today it's going to be super awesome with some good music, some good conversations, and some good information as well. Na kama kawaida, your playlist ni courtesy of the guys pale nyuma. I think at this moment in time tumuite Mr. DJ kwa sababu anafanya kazi mzuri sana. Lakini hapa tuko na conversation very interesting. And remember, as I talk about this conversation, I want you to internalize ukiwa pale hivyo nyumbani, ukiwa kwa matatu, ukiwa una watch wherever, from wherever you're watching the show from. I want you to internalize on it, and then immediately after I talk about it, send in your comments. You can also tell me what kind of songs you want me to play for you, because kama Friday, tuna usher in the weekend. So as we usher in the weekend, we usher in the weekend in style. And nobody does it better than New Day right here on Ebru TV. So today's conversation is pretty interesting, just like any other conversation that we have right here on the show. So marriage is a topic that is quite intense for a person like me, but for most, it's something absolutely beautiful. You want to get married, you want to have kids, you want to be with someone till like you're 70 and whatnot, mkikapo hivyo, mnaangalia wajukuu na vitukuu. But more often than not, in a marriage, you might not have kids. Or there might be a conversation, yeah. And I remember watching a certain Nigerian movie, alafu dema alikuwa ameolewa na a certain guy that she absolutely loved. And then things just didn't go so well because they weren't able to get a baby within the first 5 years of marriage. So after that, the in-laws, mother-in-law, kwanza alikuwa hapo, there's something wrong with you. Abi, there got to be something wrong with you. You cannot just be in a marriage and not give me children. So of course, it caused quite the stir, and they unfortunately had to break up because it just became too much. So number one, why exactly do we go into a marriage in the first place? Is it always to procreate as is expected? And what if one of the partners is not actually fertile to procreate? What are some of the stereotypes that we have with regard to fertility when it comes to marriage, and what can we do about it? Because kama kawaida, and as much as we talk about things that might be problems in society, lazima tujipatie ma solutions. We are solution providers, and I'll be introducing you to my guests who are going to be in studio with me. Wako pale wakinywa kachai kidogo, wakibarizi kidogo, and then they're going to join me right here. I'll be introducing them in a few amazing gentlemen, perfect people to have these conversations with. But I know you're also a very perfect person to have this conversation with. So make sure that you're not disappointing me. Twende pale kwenye WhatsApp and text me. 0770-729-366. Let me know about some of these stories. Have you even experienced it before? Do you have a sister? Do you have a brother who has been in such kind of a marriage? How was it? How did you go about it? How did you go through it? And at the moment, pia labda unaweza kuwa umeketi pale and you're like, whoa, are you talking about me? Mbona una shout? Reduce volume kidogo. You can also share in your stories and let me know, and we will, I promise you, we will provide that solution. So make sure natuma paragraphs pale nishakwambia in case you may miss. All the information is at the bottom part of your screen. Remember, you can also call me live. My line is open. 0115-885-797 is my number. So nipigie simu, lakini usinipigie reverse call. Alafu alternatively, you can go to our social media platforms at Ebru TV Kenya across all social media platforms except for Facebook, which is Ebru TV KE. So let's get the conversation going. To interact pale vaniambia number one, goma gani unataka nikucheze, where you tuned in to the show from, and also what's your take on the conversation that we're having. And talking about conversations, later during the show, I'll be joining my colleague Yusuf, who is currently at the DCI headquarters, because I'm being told that the Madeira Member of Parliament, that's Rigathi Gachagua, has been arrested. We don't know why just as yet, but we'll be getting the full details with regard to that story, because we always keep you updated on all developments. And Pia, For our news bulletins, kabisa tutakuwa tunakupatia comprehensive, detailed information on everything in Kenya and beyond, even when it comes to matters sports, because we all know everybody is having that conversation about the Olympics. So nitakuwa na kujuza yote na pia make sure you catch up on all our shows kabisa. But right now we need to update ourselves. We need to take a look at the newspaper review. That's the local dailies, and kama kawaida tupitie the People Daily, starting with the front page. And of course, there's drama as police arrest 2 judges. So that's the raid was with regard to Muchelule and Shitembwe, who were released after being grilled at DCI headquarters over bribery claims, but their lawyer dismisses the move as intimidation. And of course, that story will be continuing on page 4, and we'll be taking a look at it quite keenly. But also on the front page, I told you about the Olympics. And of course, Kenya's stars, they're eyeing Olympic medals. Of course, the story continues on page 2, 3, 30, 31, and 32 of this particular newspaper. But we all know it's got to be an Olympic like no other. But before we even go into the Olympic conversation, I told you my colleague Yusuf is at the DCI headquarters as he fills us in on what's currently happening. And as far as the DCI arresting, that's Madira Member of Parliament, Rigathi Gachagua. So Yusuf, can you tell us what is currently happening at the DCI?
Aziza, we are gathered here at the DCI headquarters in Kiambu Road, where Madira Member of Parliament Rigathi Gachagua was earlier on arrested in his Sagana home in Nyeri County. Sagana was arrested by, according to his lawyer, 15 members from the DCI department, and his reason for arrest is yet to be established.
Who else is at the DCI headquarters? Have we gotten any information from his lawyers or from anyone with regard to what is or what we should expect?
His lawyer has spoken, but currently there is no any other political figure or lawyer present at the DCI headquarters, but we'll be giving you as the story develops subsequently, Aziza.
Much, Yusuf, for that information. Of course, we'll be updating you more as we get the information. As we've been told, we haven't seen any political figure having reached the DCI headquarters. We've also not seen his lawyers speaking about what exactly is the reason behind his arrest. We'll be giving you all that information and so much more, so still stick right here. But in the meantime, turudi kwa the newspaper review, because the Olympics is going to be an Olympics like no other, because games from empty stadiums to daily COVID-19 testing for participants, the festival in Tokyo is truly a historic event. But as we usually expect with every Olympic event, we usually have a lot of spectators, a lot of people attending the event. But this year it's going to be quite different, because imagine an Olympic without spectators. We'll be taking a look at that quite keenly. But moving forward, let's take a look at page 2. Still on the Olympics, organizers of the games have worked hard to slash the cost and scale of the 2020 event after a historic postponement due to COVID-19 pandemic. But the number from 205 participating countries is still staggering. So as the greatest sporting extravaganza on earth officially kicks off today in Tokyo, Japan, it will be an event like no other, as I told you, thanks to the stringent measures put in place to check the spread of coronavirus. For the first time in history, the Summer Games will be held without spectators, an unprecedented measure put in place by the organizers to check the transmission of the virus. However, at least 11,000 athletes from 205 countries have converged on the Asian nation, known for its passion for sports, to battle it out for top honors in various disciplines. Tens of thousands of staff, we have officials, we have International Olympic Committee, that's IOC members, media and broadcasters are expected to jet into the Japanese capital In the coming days, of course, as the games progress, from archery rather, to wrestling, athletes will compete in 339 events in 33 sports, with 4 disciplines appearing for the first time. That is karate, skateboarding, surfing, and sports climbing. That sounds absolutely mind-blowing. We've not seen this particular disciplines before, so it's going to be quite intense and quite amazing. I can't wait to catch up on all of it. But let's take a look at who will be representing Team Kenya, because that is what's most important. Tukiangalia hizo games, tujue nani tuna support. So gallant participants flying the Kenyan flag high will be the likes of Ruth Chepngetich, world marathon champion, who will be taking part in the women's marathon. Andrew Amonde, the captain of Team Kenya to the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo, will also be having Lawrence Cherono. Chicago Marathon winner is no doubt ready for his biggest assignment this year. And last but not least, we'll have the Kenya's sevens team. That's the rugby sevens team after they qualified for Tokyo Olympics. And you can see just how excited they look in this particular photo. And we'll be definitely cheering them on. But there's a new era of athletes who are eyeing the Tokyo greatness. Bolt left a gaping hole in the world of athletics when he retired in 2017. But a new generation of stars is emerging. The question is, will they be able to crush his record? It'll be a matter of wait and see. Let's see what just this new stars have to offer. When the flame is finally lit at the Tokyo Olympics on Friday, a new era of athletes have a chance to make history in the absence of a host of established stars. So much has changed in the Olympics landscape in the 5 years since the Rio Games. 3-time double sprint champion Usain Bolt is now making music and building a family in Jamaica, while 28 medal winner Michael Phelps has retired from the pool. In Tokyo, Caleb Dressel is the most likely successor to Phelps in the medal gathering stakes. The 24-year-old American is aiming to become just the 4th swimmer in history to win 7 medals in a single games. Of course, this is one of the newcomers. Dressel is no rookie, having already won 2 relay golds at the 2016 Rio Games, but now his focus is firmly on individual glory. And of course, Bolt left a gaping hole in the world of athletics. We all know he retired in 2017, but a new generation of stars is emerging. Will they fit into those shoes? Again, it's a matter of wait and see, but let's see who these superstars are exactly. The biggest challenger to Simone Biles is herself, as she has not lost an all-round competition since 2013, of course redefining her sport along the way. So we all know that this is one person we need to watch out for. Imagine not having lost anything since 2013. She is definitely unbeatable, but also frustratingly for any young challengers, Biles has suggested she could be persuaded to continue until 2024 Paris Olympics. All right, that is as exciting as it gets. But of course, let's take a look at the drama that sleuths arrest judges over 5 million bribe claim. So lawyers claim that the move was part of efforts by the executive to intimidate judicial officers. There was drama at the Milimani Law Courts yesterday when 2 High Court judges were arrested by detectives from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. That's the DCI over bribery claims. Agri Muchelule, sorry about that, and Sai Shitembwe were whisked away from their chambers alongside their aides and driven to the DCI headquarters on Kiambu Road for interrogation. So before arresting the judges, detectives are said to have conducted a search in Justice Muchelule's chambers for close to 30 minutes. Both the judges denied the bribery allegations, adding that the officers were searched but nothing was found. And of course, what is the dispute? Justice Muchelule was among the 4 judges whose promotion to the appellate court was rejected by President Uhuru Kenyatta, and the president cited intelligence reports indicting the remaining ones on a number of issues which he did not disclose. But moving forward, the push for BBI is on course. This is according to President Uhuru Kenyatta. We've been hearing the whole conversation about BBI. Is the reggae still on? The president says so. Let's take a look at what exactly he has to say. The head of state echoes opposition leader Raila Odinga's sentiments that the reform process is still on. President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday maintained his resolve to push for the Building Bridges initiative and insisted the constitutional reform process is still on course. Remember, it was still appealed at the Court of Appeal, where the judgment of the 5 High Court judge bench was questioned when they deemed the BBI, that's the 2020 Constitutional Amendment Bill, as being unconstitutional and illegal. But now it was appealed. We're still waiting to hear what the verdict is. But according to the president, he says that BBI is still on course. So he was speaking at Kasidi Primary School in Kilifi County during the issuance of 2,100 titles. He described BBI as important to Kenyans as it is intended to bring solutions to challenges bedeviling the country, such as historical land injustices. He asked politicians to prioritize service to the people, saying leaders should stop threatening the country's unity, irrespective of their political affiliation. So this is what the president had to say, and I quote, "Na ndio maana nasema tunataka kupitisha hii BBI, ndio tuhakikishe kila sauti ya Mkenya inasikika na ina maana Kenya." Okay, and let's take a look at what his reform push also entails. President Uhuru Kenyatta has maintained his resolve to push for the Building Bridges initiative and insisted the constitutional reforms process is still on. ODM chief Raila Odinga, apologies for that, pardon my diction, has also maintained the BBI process is still on course. And lastly, the duo said that March 9, 2018 handshake was desired to bring the country together, would continue to be encouraged, warning against peace detractors. And of course, that is where we wrap it up for the news recap, or rather for the newspaper review right here on New Day. Because it's Friday, we need to take a short break. Alafu tukuje na hiyo conversation nilikuwa nimekushow. Nakwambia we're talking about fertility in marriage, the whole conversation of even having kids in marriage. How important is it? Make sure you're interacting with me across all our social media platforms at Ibru TV Kenya, across all social media platforms except for Facebook, which is Ibru TV KE. Alternatively, twende pale kwenye WhatsApp, hauhitaji bundles mob, tufike tu pale 0770729366, niongeleshe, bonga na mimi. Let me know unafilaje, ni Friday, weekend unaikaribishaje. Also, let me know what you think about the whole conversation, and I'll be sampling out all of your comments, all of them. Niliwaambia naanza my career in rapping, jana mliniona pale kwenye karaoke session. So make sure that you at least unisupport kwa hii rapping career, tuma paragraph hapo. I'll do it justice. And last but not least, you can as well call in live. My call line is open, 0115885797. Let's get it on and going. But for now, we'll be right back after the break. My goodness, the playlist today is definitely giving me life right here on the show. I hope it's doing the same for you, because it's Feel Good Friday na lazima to feel good kabisa. Na chiki pale hivyo Judy Piri pia yana feel good. Ashatik, nisha mark kwa register pale hivyo ashawasili. We are within us. So good morning Aziza, watching from Kanairo. Mliamua tu Kanairo itaitwa Kanairo. Sawa. And I said, I'll go for companionship when I get into marriage. The rest will just be a blessing. All right, in case you're probably wondering, anasema nini ama hiyo topic ama hiyo comment yake imetoka wapi? Today we're going to have a very interesting conversation. It's something that maybe we don't talk about enough as a society. We don't bring it out, or we shun away from it, or rather, like the rug we have here, we sweep it just under the rug. So I told you about the Nigerian movie Me I was watching, and these two people absolutely loved each other. They were so in love, decided to get married. Absolutely beautiful. And obviously for them, they really wanted to get kids out of marriage, but they just couldn't understand why exactly they couldn't get kids. So even after trying and everything, and the pressure from the family was getting too much, it actually affected their marriage, and they ended up divorcing because of the pressure. It was like, huyu mwanamke ndo ako na shida. There has to be a problem with her. There has to be something absolutely wrong with her. And obviously your conversation, yeah, the other woman who will help the marriage came about, and that's just how the marriage ended. Both of them were very sad because, as I told you previously, walipendana sana sana sana. And after every Nigerian movie, to God be the glory. So the whole point of this conversation is not for the sarcasm, it's not for the laughter that we're getting out of it, it's for the particular perceived problem that is in the story itself. So when it comes to fertility in marriage, what are some of the stereotypes that we have? What is the conversation even about? And what are some of the things that we're doing and maybe hurting other people intentionally or not intentionally? All that and so much more is what we're going to be tackling on today's show. Nilikwambia show inakuanga tu mziki bomba kabisa, mziki shwari. We also have some good conversations, and at the same time, we keep you updated. So sit right and sit tight. But as you do that, I want to hear your comments. Chezeni ka judipiri hapa hivi vile tick register kwa roll call hapo hivyo mapema. Teke chap chap. 0770-729-366 is my WhatsApp number. Nataka kuona mamesunje zimwokre pale hivyo. And team paragraphs, my favorite people in the world. Chezeni ka nyinyi kabisa. You can also call in live and share in on your stories, share in on your sentiments. Leo tufungue roho kabisa. 0115885797 is my number. My line is open, lakini mkumbuke msinipigie reverse call jamani. And last but not least, you can tag me all over social media at Ibru TV Kenya on all social media platforms except for Facebook, which is Ibru TV KE. But right now, najua wako pale nyumbani, lakini hapa studioni nina wageni, and they did not tell me that we had a memo of what we should be wearing. They are matching, but apparently I'm the odd one out, but it's okay. They're looking absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to start with mwenye mmezoea kwa isho, alafu tumuintroduce mgeni wetu kwa shangwe, nderemo, kishamsham, yes. All right, Samson Mungathia, how are you doing?
I'm quite good. It's a pleasure being back again, as you've said.
We always feel good to have you on this show, by the way. And in case you're probably wondering, he's a transformational speaker, an author. He's definitely doing the most. And he's the man that you'll never see in jeans and sneakers and a shirt, pale voya senali. I've tried. I have prayed about it, but it's never happened. But we love you right here. How has your week been?
Wow, that's good. I think, of course, as I told you one day, I will be in that mood of doing it. At times, the nature of what I do demands I appear like I am today or like I've been most days.
Yeah.
My week has been quite good. I really can't complain. I've achieved at least 85% of what I was set to achieve for the week. And as usual, looking for the weekend. And as I said, my weekends are very predictable because, of course, I'll be spending indoors with my children and ensuring they are well.
And how are they doing when endeleaje?
They are doing good. I really thank God. I've also had an opportunity to be with them for the entire week. In fact, the entire week I've just been reducing my activities to ensure I'm with them because they are home for holiday.
Yeah.
The one-week-long holiday. Because on Tuesday again they are back to class. So I want to shelve off some time to spend with them the days. Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful, my goodness. Asante sana. And we absolutely feel good to have you on this show. We're having a conversation on Olympics. We might get him to actually wear jeans and join us, but that's besides the point. And we have an amazing guest. Amepiga pale. When I see you, I see an African dad who's... Because me, I love my father a lot, so na get hizo vibes kabisa. In case you're probably wondering, beni wetu ni nani? Amefika kwenye show for the first time, and lazima tumkaribishe in a special kind of way. Karibu sana. His name is Davis Kelman. When I was hearing your second name, I thought it was very foreign. Is it?
No. My name is very local. Yeah.
Have I said it okay?
Kelman. You didn't pronounce it as my mother would pronounce it.
How would she pronounce it?
Let's leave that for another day.
But how was your week?
But the rest of my friends pronounce it exactly the way you have. So
How was your week?
My week has been awesome. It has been very nice. I thank God for everything that I've been able to achieve in the course of the week. Yeah.
And what are your plans for the weekend? You already look like woko weekendi mode. This is the ultimate Saturday look. Ukitoka kanisa, alafu na
I will be preaching somewhere this weekend, so I look forward to Nairobi Chapel Youth Service. That's where I'll be preaching at. Apart from that, just spending time with my family. I have also just children of my sister visiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to have a nice time.
And let me tell you, when I asked him, what do you do? He's like, I'm a full-time father, and I couldn't be any more proud. But I'm super happy to have you on the show today. We have a conversation that wengi wetu hatupendi kuongelea, ama tukiongelea, we usually have a negative connotation to it. Tunaonanga tu, yo mambo ya nani, lazima kuna kashida pahali. But let's start from the point of a marriage. Why do we even go into a marriage in the first place? What are some of the things that make us into, that drive us into marrying someone? Why do we have to marry this person? Mbona tusikae tu? What is the whole point of marriage, Samson?
One, I think the whole point of marriage, I want to look at it from two perspectives. One is from the African setup or the African culture, because it's essentially what we're going to be discussing. And then the other one is from a perspective of an individual as a person. Now, one, from a cultural perspective, I'll say the main purpose of marriage from a culture, an African culture, is for continuity. You know, that's what you find. I was thinking through it, and you find in prior times, you know, maybe 90s and backwards, you can find people having what was called arranged marriages. Even today, it's there in some cultures. So it's not about me, it's not about the other partner, it's about the society, it's about the community. That's the standpoint of the society. Now, from the other end, at a personal level, people get into marriage, of course, for various reasons, but I'll tell you, one of them is to have companionship. And companionship, of course, it brings in now the issue of either having children or not having children, but just having somebody you can lean on, somebody you can share with, somebody you can advance life with, and somebody you can entrust and trust your life with. Now, of course, there could be other reasons as to why people get into marriage, one of them being to please the people again. You know, you're going into it because people are saying you are old enough, you know, you are past this year, so you're past this age, or you're doing this and that. So you find people are going into it, not really because they were ready for it, not really because it's in their heart. Not that people could maybe like to be single forever, but they have to do it for the society. You have to do it for your father, for your mother, for the aunties who will always be asking, when are you bringing us someone, you know. So there are many reasons, but at the end of the day, whatever the reason it is, I think it should be personal first. Yeah.
When you look at society, do you think we have the right idea of marriage, or is our idea of marriage, especially in our generation, in a generation where we have a lot going on, tunaitwa the millennials. So do you think that we have the right idea of marriage, or is our idea of marriage just messed up?
When I look at marriage for the millennials, well, not very many millennials are married, right?
Starting with that.
Yeah. But my experience is that marriages have been struggling in the recent past. It's not that marriages have not always been struggling, but when we lose the purpose of marriage, I come from the perspective that marriage is God's idea.
Yeah.
That God is the one who institutionalized marriage. And that marriage, if it is not fulfilling God's plan, will, for some reason or another, begin to veer off the very intention of marriage. So why would the millennials be struggling right now? And not just the millennials, but okay, especially the millennials, is when you lose the focus of God, the plan of God for marriage. When you lose the plan of God for marriage, then definitely it is an abuse of the institution. And when you abuse anything, it doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say if we, and where you find millennials, and there are many instances where I have seen young people really having amazing marriages, well, when you find marriages that first acknowledge their role in the marriage and acknowledge the place of God in the marriage and the purpose for which the marriage was established, then the marriage tends to be more successful. This does not mean that there will be no challenges, because challenges often come, but it just means that, you know, you're equipped with the tools to navigate the processes of marriage and the challenges that come your way.
All right, and maybe you've spoken about the purpose of marriage. Maybe what are some of the wrong reasons as to why we go into marriage? Because we need to understand where the rain started beating us in the first place for us to finally arrive at the problem. So what are some of these wrong ideas or wrong reasons that drive us into marriage that necessarily just derail the whole marriage altogether?
Quite a number of them. Beginning with what I've just mentioned, one is peer pressure. You know, we are getting married because so and so has gotten married. A
Like
friend of
time, the
mine, you
clock.
know, yeah, not even really the time, but because maybe we were a group of friends, you know, a group of boys,
Oh, everyone
a
is
boys
getting
club, and that
married.
club everybody has gotten married. So
Yeah.
why am I being left out? No, that pressure of you're marrying to fit into that given group. That's one of the reasons. Now, the second, like I said, of course, is now the family, you know, the immediate family, the community, you know, people, you go home, the aunties asking you, Kwani, how have you come home this holiday? How are you doing? What's the next stage or the next step? So you find somebody is going into marriage not because they are really ready for the marriage, but because the father demands or the mother demands or the relatives are really expecting this and that to happen. Now, the third point could be, of course, circumstantial. Circumstantial in the sense that maybe you've been having a relationship here and there, maybe along the way you get a child or something happens and then you have to conceal it. Of course, now you end up getting into marriage not because you really planned, but because circumstances pushed you to that. And you have to cover up, you know, you have to cater for these things, you have to secure yourself, your future, and all these things. So you find it's circumstances that have really pushed you into it. Now, if you do marriage based on all those circumstances, those events, either to please the people, peer pressure, you know, the circumstances, of course, at the end of the day, you want to be in the right mind to handle the pressure that comes with it and the responsibility that comes with the marriage institution.
Okay, you stated there's a huge responsibility that comes with the institution of marriage. And more often than not, you also, at the beginning, ulituambia kwamba, we go into marriage to procreate and feel the world. So is having kids in a marriage actually very, very important? Can I get married and not think about the whole conversation of, I don't want kids in a marriage?
Of course you can. I mean, people can do all sorts of things. We are free people. The whole idea of marriage, of getting children is paramount to marriage, definitely. I mean, the whole structure of marriage is intended. That's why we don't define a union between a man and a man as a marriage or a woman and a woman as a marriage. But when they have a man and a woman, you know, primarily the reason why it is of separate genders is because the separate genders are biologically designed to procreate. So that's by design a function of the marriage. But marriages can succeed and model good life just without children. So children are important, but they're not absolutely necessary. They're good. I mean, it's an icing on the cake, but the marriage itself is from the Christian perspective, I would say that one of the things that you find in marriage is a glimpse, if you will, a glimpse of what God has intended for us in terms of God. We have the marriage between Christ and the church, and that is coming at the consummation of time. And a small glimpse of the beauty that promises can be found within marriage. And just tell me, maybe you haven't experienced it, but when I was young, before I was married and all, I'd be walking along the road and perhaps I would meet a family, you know, a happy family, a husband, 2 kids or 3, you know, dropping at a petrol station, perhaps with some select or some food stuff, and then they are after from church, and you admire just looking at how beautiful the family looks like and stuff like that. And imagine that beauty when there is a well-managed family without a lot of conflicts or people being able to solve the conflict. You know, you look at that and you say, you know, I desire that. So when I was young, that is what I would desire. And I looked to that, not because people told me, man, marriage, but when I saw examples of successful marriages and families that I saw were successful, there was a lot of good that made me want to. I was raised by a single mother. My father died when I was really young, and so I didn't get an opportunity to have that thing in our own family. But by seeing other families and the beauty of successful marriages, I desired that for myself and for my family in the future. So yeah, children are important, but I've seen marriages succeed without children.
Okay, so for the people who might have different opinions, because at the end of the day, people have different definitions of their kind of success when they think about their future. When should we have the conversation? Let's say you want to get married with a certain guy. Your conversation, yeah, when and how or how many kids should we have in a marriage, or do we even want to have kids in a marriage in the first place? When should we have that conversation? Is it before the marriage? Is it after the marriage? And is it even necessary to have that conversation about kids in a marriage? Or do we just assume that tuko kwa marriage, so, you know, it just needs to happen?
No, I think it's very paramount to have that conversation prior, of course. Given the society that we're living in and the dynamics that we're having now, you know, where you find you have conflict of interest, you have to pursue your career, you have to pursue these other things and your goals. So I think basically it's very important that you have that conversation. Now the timing, when? Before the marriage, of course. If possible, just make it part of your dating process if you're going to date, or whatever the time that you're going to spend interacting before you formalize your marriage and become married couple. Spend time, talk about it, you know, discuss the number of children you want to have, intervals of maybe the timing that you want to have them. And of course, you have to discuss that whole issue looking at it, because at the end of the day, it's your life. But also, when you bring these children onto your life, then it's your responsibility to take care of them. So you have to think about these children not just from your own perspective as you two individuals, but also from their perspective. What kind of modeling are you going to be making for them, for their life, for their future? What kind of picture are you going to be portraying for them? And then at the end of the day, where do you want them to be? You know, their goal should also be part of your goals and your planning. So it's very important to have that discussion, discuss before the marriage. Don't wake up and find yourself already in a marriage, you have 1 kid, 2 kids, 3, and then you're like, what happened? How did you get here? So have a prior roadmap to that before you get married.
Okay, and part of having that roadmap, lack of not having that roadmap might actually cause a few challenges. So what's the impact of not having a conversation? And yeah, we try to evade and assume that they'll just know. We'll just find out along the way. Pali tutafikia mwisho, ndo we'll call it a close. We'll call it a wrap for how many kids we want to have. So impact ya kutokuwa na hiyo conversation ni ipi. And also, if we have differing opinions, if our opinions differ with regard to, I want to have kids right now. Let's say, for example, I'm not saying this is my real life situation, but let's put it in this case study where we have a lot of women who are also working right now. We've given a chance for women to be on the table as well. So you find, contrary to what we had in the past, where we would be working at home and taking care of the kids, we have women who are doing both taking care of the kids and working at the same time. So yeah, anaona kwamba let's have kids 5 years after we get married. But this man wants to have kids. He wants to be a dad. He wants to experience that whole joy of fatherhood from the get-go in a marriage. So having differentiating opinions with regard to sangapi nataka kuwa na mtoto, is it reason enough for us to leave each other or to consider marrying somebody else who has the same opinion as you? And also, as you answer the other question.
Okay, I think that one is quite, maybe, I won't say it's tricky, but I'll say this. At the end of the day, even if it's not about children and the timing and all this, marriage is about concession. You know, it's about giving up so that somebody also can take some space. There is no single day that we're going to be having a complete one-direction opinion on everything. You know, if you're not having different opinion on finances, on investment, on your goals, on your dreams, you know, all these things. So same case should be approached as we approach the issue of children again. A consensus should be reached. For example, this guy wants to have children maybe immediately after marriage. The lady maybe has career goals to pursue. So the point is to sit down and discuss what are the advantages of having these children at this point, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of pursuing this career first. So at the end of the day, in that conversation, remember you are coming in for a lifetime adventure, or maybe at least for a very long-term adventure, if not a lifetime adventure. So it's important to have a concession you agree first. I believe you should not leave each other based on, we can't agree on number of children, on this and that, because if that's the basis again, you're going to find a whole lot of things that you can't agree on. So basically it's about building consensus, agree first, sit down and then count first. What's the merits, what's the demerits, and all this. Now the downside of not having this conversation is that you're going to find yourself a very disgruntled party in that marriage. You got in with your own expectation that you never tabled. This other guy or this other lady came in with the expectation that they never tabled, and now you find conflict of interest. We were coming to marriage, I was having expectation of having children 1 year down the line or 2 years down the line, and somebody came with the expectation of having children maybe 10 years down the line. So what happens is that if you don't have this conversation, you're going to start off your marriage from a conflicting point. You'll be having issues from day one that we have to address, that we have to sort, and therefore it becomes very easy to address them prior, before you come together and start off, have a roadmap, have an idea. At least you may not have all the details, but at least be knowing this is where we're going. We are going to achieve this by this time, so that in case of any variation, you can shift and accommodate. But don't walk in and find yourself in a foreign territory where you have no idea, or you have different ideas that are going to be conflicting, and then you start off your marriage with counseling, with fighting, with cases, and all these other things.
Yeah.
Can I throw
yes,
in a
please?
word? There's a saying, it's common, that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Compatibility needs to be examined before you get married. There are many beautiful women, but there's a woman you choose amongst them all. That means, to the exclusion of all others, I choose you. And by the time you're saying, I choose you to the exclusion of all others, then you must have examined that, my values are your values. The direction I want to take in life is the direction you want to take in life, at least by and large. By then you will have talked and said, how many children would you like to have? I would like to have 2. I would like 4. Can we do 3? And then you reach compromise. That's the concession he was talking about. And then once you make the compromises in marriage and you agree, then you get into marriage, because you're agreeing on the broad things. And believe me, the children are part of the broad things that you must agree on. And then once you get into marriage, you hope that God in his mercy will allow that to happen, because then you could get into it and those children don't come. Or you get into it and when you wanted 3 children, you've gotten the first one, you've gotten the second one, you're planning for the third one, you get triplets. And so, there is the element where, God in his mercy allows you to, but you must be flexible and know that things happen. Life sometimes throws you a curveball, and you must be ready and prepared to, adjust.
Yeah, when you spoke about compatibility, it reminded me of a friend of mine, aliambiwa wako compatible. So I hope she's listening back at home and actually learning what it means to be compatible to someone else. But now, part of making decisions when it comes to having children is the external party that forms part of your marriage or that forms part of your relationship. There are your in-laws, that's your mother-in-law, there's your father-in-law, there are your sister-in-laws. Kwa Kiswahili si tunawaita mawifi na mashemshem pale hivyo, lazima wawe na opinion when it comes to your marriage. So number 1, when we're having this conversation ya watoto, are in-laws obligated to the children you're meant to have? And also, are you supposed to consult them that now we're supposed to have children? What do you think about it? Are they entitled to know or contribute to the children conversation in your relationship?
It depends on the culture you come from. Remember I talked about compatibility. If you come from a culture that happens and that applies to your partner, and they're okay with that, I don't see what's the problem with that. But if you come from a culture that most of us come from, that's a decision between you and your significant other, right?
You're saying it with so much enthusiasm. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's a conversation you have between you and your significant other. But, you know, Africans, we live as a society, right? I'm imagining I have a brother and I have a sister, but let me think as an African. If, and God forbid, if my brother was to pass away and he has little children, you know, they are my responsibility after that, right? I mean, and I know that deep inside my heart, that their education, their schooling, and everything like that becomes my responsibility. I have to see them through, and that the plans that my brother had for them. So sometimes in such a situation, when your brother begins to have 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm thinking like an African here.
Like, alafu.
Bro, ikutendaje? Yeah.
But now I want to
I'm
put it
just thinking
to,
like an African here.
I want to put it to setting. Yeah, I want to speak on behalf of the women because more often than not, that's a very logical point because obviously, and it's good to see that you're helping to take care of people who are actually your family without expecting anything in return. But now, when it comes to this whole conversation where in-laws are involved in a relationship, I told you about the story of the Nigerian movie I was watching, and those people were not having it, or they could not have it because the mother was like, you're not having children. There's something wrong with this woman. So this whole aspect of maybe your mother-in-law or your father-in-law feeling, and maybe most women are the ones affected in an African situation, that there's a problem with you if there are no children in that relationship. The aspect of fertility. We often think it's the woman's problem because obviously a man does not have a problem. So how do we beat that stereotype to start with? And even as being a man, what is your whole idea of in-laws being, I would say, over-involved?
I think one, it's good to get facts because if you do research, you read whatever the psychology. Like I was checking an article from an American MedLab they call it MedLab Association, and this is just a professional board, a medical board, and they say they did research, and they estimate that 8 to 12% of the global population have fertility issues. That's means both male and female, and then they say it's almost 50-50.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, this idea we have in an African setup that it is the woman to blame, I think it's a misplaced idea because not unless you have concrete medical evidence. Otherwise, we should assume either way or either party is to blame. So we have to do with that because it's stereotypical. In an African culture, it's the woman who has to carry the blame, has to carry the issues and all these things. So I think first we need to get the facts right. So if you're in such a scenario, you're in such a moment, then you should seek facts first before you seek to blame the other person, the other party. Although at the end of the day, the external parties don't really look at it from a factual perspective because there is a way society has programmed us to think. Now, coming back to the issue of the in-laws getting involved, at times I tell people in-laws can be outlaws. No, they can mismanage you. It's very possible. Because remember, marriage is a union between two people. When you're coming together, assuming it's not an African arranged marriage, it's just a normal marriage, then again, it's between you two. When you met, there's something that you looked at the eyes or the body or that other person and saw, I can cope with this, I like this, and the attributes that you saw in that person. So at the end of the day, whether marriage works or doesn't work, basically, in as far as we have the support system and all these other issues, the biggest percentage of making the marriage work is about you two. You know, the people in the marriage, the two people in the marriage. And therefore, the issue of in-laws, they should be limited. Of course, they have the right to be involved in a number of issues because, like, if you have any issues, you are going to run to them, of course, for help and for advice and for all these other things. But then don't overindulge them in your activities, in your plans. You know, this kind of a setup whereby you're going to discuss with the mother-in-law, like, now the man, discussing with the mother, how many children are we going to have? How many, you know, how old, I mean, after how long are you going to be having these children? All these conversations, I believe, should be personal between the two of you. let them come in to support your decisions, but don't let them make your decisions.
Yeah, and you've spoken about the whole aspect of fertility and the facts that we need to get. Do you think that we as society then downplay the importance of having fertility checks before a marriage? And we've spoken about your conversation tuna have with regard to children and everything. Should we also embrace checking that and ensuring that, you know, we need to know what is the state of my partner, what is my state, as we have all the other checks that we have before we get into marriage?
I think it's important, given where we are today. Of course, traditionally, maybe it was not possible to do the checkup and all this because the advancement in technology, the access to, you know, the specialist and all these things maybe was not viable back then. But with the current rate of technology and the current rate of exposure, I think it's something that we need to have. Now, you may not go for the checkup, the fertility checkup and all this, but if you're not going to go for that, then again, have that discussion. What happens if we get into this and we don't get children? It doesn't have to be a fertility, a primary fertility issue from the word go. You could get married today, tomorrow you get an accident that makes it impossible to have children. So it's always going to have this broader conversation of what if we get into it and these plans does not materialize, because you could be having fertility tests and checks and everything showing positive, but then again, you never know what happens tomorrow, what happens 1 year down the line or 2 years down the line. And like I said, marriage is a long-term kind of engagement. So it's going to have the checks if possible, but if not, at least ensure you have this conversation of we are going into this, what happens if it doesn't work?
Yeah. So have that conversation, but in the meantime, mukiwa na hiyo conversation hapo hivyo kwa living room, because I believe we've sparked a lot of sparks, so make sure that you also keep on interacting with us. 0770-729-366 is my WhatsApp number. Nitumie pale mamisunje ama vipi. You can also call in live. Remember, my number is 0115-885797, ama tupende pale social media. Tupendane, tuongeleshane at Ebru TV Kenya on all social media platforms except for Facebook, which is Ebru TV KE. You can as well alternatively catch up on everything you missed out right here on the show pale hivyo kwenye YouTube at Ebru TV Kenya. Make sure una subscribe kwanza, alafu catch up na New Day episodes zote kabisa. But for now, we need to kunywa maji kidogo. Tumezungumza sana, alafu tunarudi. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back. Don't you absolutely love Feel Good Friday? I know I do. And I can see pia kuna wase hapa hivi kwa WhatsApp pia wanna enjoy the show. Oliver from Utawala, big shout out to you. And as I read my comments, nisikie poa. Jamani, big shout out to yourself kabisa. And thank you very much for tuning in. Tukona Brian Omondi enjoying the show all the way from LD, City of Champions. Alafu tukona Levi Nico tuned in kutoka Kanairo. Watu wa Kanairo jamani. But anyway, in case you're probably just joining in and you're wondering what exactly were we talking about, because as I usually tell you on this show, kila mtu mwingine ajasikia tuongeleanga good music, good conversations, na some good information. You got it, right? Amazing. And we were talking about the whole aspect of marriage, fertility, kuwa na watoto kwenye ndoa. Whose responsibility is it? Does your family have an entitlement into just knowing or contributing to the entire conversation ikifika kwa marriage yako? Should you consult them when you're having that conversation with regard to how many children you should have? Wewe na partner wako mnafaa kuongelelea watoto wangapi mnataka kwenye marriage? All that is what we were tackling right here on the show. But remember, I still urge you to keep on sending in your text via 0770-729-366. Alternatively, 0115-885797 is my call number. So call in live. Na in case unaona udema na rap sana hapa hivi, toka aseme anaanzisha harap career, you can as well just keep up with all the information because it's right here. Inacheza tu hapa hivi at the bottom part of your screen. So capture it and tuonge pamoja, tuzungumze. I want to hear your feedback on everything. But right now, I need to get back to my twinsies. Waliamua watavaa blue bila kuniambia, but ni sawa, sija catch, niko tu sawa. Yeah, or whatever Bien said. Okay. But right now, we need to take a look at the whole conversation of the number 2 being introduced in your marriage to help your marriage, in quotes, because the woman apparently has failed to provide children in the marriage. First of all, when you even hear of that, how does that make you feel?
It sent chills in my spine. That is not usually a solution. Well, it could be a solution in the sense that you could get children as a man, but in the long term, it introduces generational conflicts in families. I mean, things that could easily have been avoided. Families end up having issues that transcend generations. And I think even in the Bible, you have many examples of such. So number two is always a problem. So I think that's what I will leave it at right now. But it's, I mean, you know, it will introduce issues of inheritance, issues of favoritism, issues of, you know, sometimes we know families that end up with murders and killings. And when I think about what that potentially might bring to the family, you'd rather deal with childlessness or consider other options of divorce and things like that, because they have less baggage. Yes.
And part of the conversation of being very fertile is the gender that you're able to bring on when it comes to your offspring. And still again, in an African society, we can all agree by mutual consent, the woman is normally the one who's overburdened with the responsibility of giving birth to either a male child or a female child. And if we take a look at biology, we have chromosomes where there's the chromosome XX for the woman and the chromosome XY. So when biology tells us that, and we have this whole gender conversation and fault ya mtu, is it anybody's fault to start with?
Well, I think from a traditional perspective, it appears that African tradition got quite a number of things wrong. In terms of facts, of course, in ethics they were good, and morals they were very okay. But in terms of facts, it appears they'd gotten wrong, because, like I've said, it's the gentleman's side that it determines the gender of the child. So at the end of the day, the blame on the woman or the blame on the lady, of course, is misplaced, because scientifically it has been proven, there is science behind it, there is proof behind it, that it is not the woman but the man. So, but coming back to it again, we are living in an age of information explosion. You know, it's no longer about ignorance. You know, those traditions were based on presumptions, a set of assumptions that people assumed, assumptions that people just made or some people made deliberately over time. But today we are living in an age whereby you can access information at your fingertip at any moment, at any one time. So I believe this one should not be an issue, because it's not a solution that we're going to get, maybe by bringing, like we were talking about, the number two or anything, because we've seen it also in African society. Even today, people doing so, you're going for a number two because you want a child of maybe the opposite gender or the next gender, and it ends up maybe either way. Most probably it could end up still the same way like the first wife. But for me, one advice that I could give to anybody who is looking for this is, at this age and moment, we are giving children equal opportunities. You know, we are talking of bringing both of them at the table, you know, giving them opportunities to excel, to do all these things. In as far as traditionally the boy child was the custodian, the carrier of the family name, of course, we have seen instances and times whereby also the girl child has become the carrier of the family name, brought glory to the family. So either the child that you get, of course, the desire, the personal desire, but whichever the gender that you get, thank God, nurture that person, because you never know where their end will take them.
So in your opinion, we could do more with regard to how we expose ourselves to information, especially when it comes to childbearing?
Yeah. We should do more, of course, because you're living in an age whereby you can access information, you can access all these other things. But then at the end of the day, you know, there is the personal opinion. You can get as much information as you want, but it boils down to your personal opinion and your personal decision-making capability and your focus, where you want to end. So to me, it's not about really having information, because in the age of information, it's about making decisions and sticking by those decisions, that whatever the child, whatever the gender that comes, I'm going to take care of this and know that they are the ones who are going to carry maybe my name to the next level or whatever for posterity, part of it.
All right, and this seems like such a hard thing to have to swallow, especially if you are in that situation. So we need to develop a point of understanding. So if we are the couple that's, let's say, in that particular situation, maybe I, as the woman, have niko na shida na fertility yangu, ama maybe my man has a problem. How should we then establish that common ground that, you know what, it's okay? And is it even okay? So what's next after we found out that information?
You know, like any other problem, there's a period of shock, right? I don't know how each family deals with different shocks, but I know that any shocking information would, for me, would be a bit difficult to deal with at first. I think each family will have determined for itself its patterns of resolving issues. As an individual, I would be silent for a very long time, and that means that I'm internalizing and trying to work things out. Then by the time when I have dealt with the shock and I'm able to discuss, say, with my spouse, then we will get to the discussion points and look at alternatives, saying, can we visit doctors? Can we visit gynecologists? Can we get advice? Can we, you know, what have other people been doing? Can we go to the internet and see what other couples going through the same situations have done and stuff like that? Again, some of this and the solutions that are involved cost money. Do we have the resources necessary to make the next step? How is our support system? Is our support system well equipped to help us go through this phase? Sometimes when you don't, as a couple, have enough money, but you have a working support system, parents who are able to say, okay, we are going to help you with in vitro fertilization, how much does it cost and stuff like that. Now you have to examine a whole spectrum of things, appreciating your realities as a couple. Where are we at? Where do we want to go? And sometimes, well, sometimes the difficult decision is God has intended this for us.
We accept.
Well, let's carry our cross and try to make our life as meaningful as possible. Others decide that, you know what, we don't mind raising other people's kids. Can we adopt? So of course, there are many solutions or alternatives available. You examine that which works for you.
Yeah, and we want to stick to those alternatives because more often than not, when a problem comes, unayonanga ni kama like a giant brick wall that cannot be brought down, especially when it comes to matters having children. How do you, I know, okay, if you were to place yourself in that situation, super glad that God has blessed you with amazing, beautiful children. But let's say if you were to place yourself in a position where there's that man who maybe cannot sire kids, or maybe there's the woman who can't sire kids. There are women who can't, who their structure of their body, internal structure, cannot support the kids even if they are able to conceive. So ikiwa imefikia your situation, how do I then start assuring my partner emotionally, because it affects them and damages them emotionally, for some even completely? How do I assure them, and how do I introduce a conversation? Yeah, babe, these are the different alternatives that we have, and why shouldn't we try them out?
One, I think it goes back to the foundation that you laid when you're getting married, when you're coming together. How is your conversation procedures? Do you, are you open to each other, or you have your personal issues, I have my personal issues, and then we share just bit by bit? Because if you have an open kind of a relationship where you can discuss anything, then it doesn't bring much issue exploring this. But there are those other scenarios where you find people just, you have your own solution, my own solutions, and then we bring them on the table and discuss this. So ideally, one, create the right environment to discuss that thing or that issue. Don't bring up the issue when it's hot, people are just having stress, people are having pressure, maybe you have just visited the doctor, confirmed this and this, and said maybe it's impossible, you're not going to get a kid. So don't bring up those conversations just following that maybe a doctor's visit. Create a conducive time, environment, of course. Give them time, of course, to internalize that, the information that has been given. And once you have settled to 8, again, like I said, marriage is about concession now. It's sitting down and exploring the options. Are we going for the IVF? Are we going to adopt a child? Are we going to just stay like that and assume nothing happens? Because all these options are available, and we have seen people doing it. You know, the good thing with life is that there is nothing new that happens under the sun.
And maybe as you say that, is it wrong for me to explore other alternatives? Because there's some people who usually think that, okay, biology is there, is it technology mpya, so maybe it's very, very grave. It's very, very wrong for me to explore different alternatives.
It also depends, for that one, for me, I'll say it depends on the culture that you're coming from, and then also what you want for your life in the future. Because if you look at it, there is the whole issue of ethics behind the IVF, behind the biological means, the other means outside, like, you know, acquiring or buying or going to a blood bank, I mean, not a blood bank, a sperm bank to buy sperm or to buy the ovum, all these things. There is an ethical part of it. So the question comes, what's your support system, what's your culture take about it, and then what's your personal take about it, what are your principles? So if it's anything that is not conflicting your personal values, it's not conflicting maybe your culture, if you're so much into culture, it's anything that is not going to violate your personal principles or your family principles as a family, I don't see any problem with it. But you should check out and of course confirm and look at the impact, the implications. How will it affect our relationship? How will it affect our relationship with the extended family, of course, because you can find maybe your closest support systems against it. In this case, try to have discussion with them, also bring them on board if they are well intended. If they have good intentions for you, then bring them on board, discuss all the possibilities. But at the end of the day, remember the decision that you take should only be between you and your partner. You know, as far as you bring the other people, of course, for opinion, for guidance, for support, and all these other things, at the end of the day, it's about the two of you.
Okay. And maybe for a conversation like adopting a new child and whatnot, different people perceive it differently and different people embrace it differently. And this is something that might affect your external part of your marriage. That's your family, that's your friends and whatnot. How do you then introduce such a conversation, and how do you make it better if it's something that you and your spouse have agreed on? Tunaanzaje?
Just looking at the range of opinions and cultural taboos that we have. You know, you cannot bring another person to inherit land here, or somebody who is not our blood cannot be buried here, or stuff like that. I know different cultures have different issues. That's a difficult thing to cross. You know, first, before you get there, you pray. You pray. You sit down and you pray, and then you trust God, and then you approach the rest of the family. I think the most important thing is once you have agreed with your spouse, for me, that's the big thing. Once you've agreed with your spouse, the rest will come into line. But if you speak with one voice as an institution, husband and wife, there's no challenge that you cannot overcome. I know that there are usually some big challenges to face, but
Wakikataa wamekataa
Wakika-
kabisa, like,
you
si
move
wetu,
ahead
hata
anyway.
hafanani na sisi.
You move ahead anyway, yeah.
And maybe as we sum it up here, the family plays a big role in the support system in any kind of journey that you have. When you think about having a surrogate child where somebody else carries your baby for you, they play an essential role in the success of that entire process. We look at the aspect of a lot of negativity that comes, and a lot of people are depressed because of such situations. So how can we then speak to the family that is behind this depression from a point of they care about you, they want to be genuine to you, but whatever they do actually affects you in a negative way?
Two things. One is that we are at a point of cultural revolution, if I may say, or cultural interchange. You know, we are moving from that traditional setup whereby people made decisions based on stereotypes, based on existing whatever pieces of information, and we are moving to an area whereby people are making decisions based on enlightenment and the facts and statistics and all these other things. So to this, maybe a family that is looking at it like, you know, we don't support this, we don't do this. For me, the challenge is look at the people who have done it. We may call it westernization, but like if you look at people like the guy behind Apple, Steve Jobs, was an adopted child. You know, he didn't grow up in his own family. There is a guy in the public speaking spectre called Les Brown, one of the biggest motivational speakers globally. That guy says he never knew his father or mother because he was adopted at around 7 weeks old. So at the end of the day, it's about bringing these people to understand and to know that you can raise your own children and they become crooks. You can adopt a child and they become a good child. So it's not about really the entire conversation should not be centered and focused on children and, you know, the inheritance and all that for kid. It's about the satisfaction of these two people that are involved in this marriage. How are they going to survive? How are they going to live? Are they okay with it? Are they satisfied? Because at the end of the day, you might look at pleasing the society and end up living a miserable life yourself. So the extended family, the support system, at the end of the day, what I will say is these two people came together to begin their journey. And the moment they came together, of course, they are part of you, but again, they are independent of you. So give them time, give them space, support them. At least where you can't support them, don't demean them or don't draw them back, leave them.
Okay, and I have a twist to this. You might have, okay, things happen, and I know you read the Bible, and we've heard the story of, I won't mention who, Amika for such a long time without getting kids, and then finally it happened. There are times where you decide to adopt a child, and then later on you get your own child. And you're tempted because this is your blood to treat your blood better. How do you go about the aspect that for a long time we thought we couldn't have kids, we prayed and prayed and prayed, and finally, even after adopting tukapata mtoto wetu, how do we go about that? How do we establish that balance?
Love. I know this is a stereotype for many people, like love, what does that mean really? But unconditional love, unconditional acceptance. In many African cultural settings, what was primarily of greatest importance was family name. And anyone could propagate that family name. The temptation to treat your biological child better is always there. Maybe often treating the other one worse, because perhaps before you got the child, you were treating them okay, and then after this one has come, then and that's a real thing. You know, we cannot underestimate the chemical processes going on in human beings, because these are not just psychological, but you know, there's a lot of attachment to your own flesh and blood. But if you are deliberate, that whatever I will do, if it's good for the gander, it's good for the goose, then you just ensure that you, and being very deliberate, that you do what is best for both. Often one thing that usually helps is in such a situation, is, of course, is age difference. And age difference allows you, especially if you waited for a long time, looking at your example, if you waited for a long time, that gives you age difference, and that allows you to treat everyone in their particular space appropriately. But when they are not so far apart, that's when the greatest temptation is.
But what about if there's a teenager and then there's a young child that's coming in, and at your teenage period, your emotions are all over the place. There's certain decisions that you want to make as an adult because you believe you're a young adult, and kuna ile kachuki kiasi kameingia. So the teenager might think that you don't actually like them, and now you like this one because that is your child. Samson, how would you go about it?
I think first to adoption, it's a whole process. Of course, you go through counseling, you go through some training, some basics, and you know, you get information, the basics. So one of them, if you have gone through the normal process, you have gone through the law, of course, because it's also a legal issue. It's not about the community and the likes. It's also a legal issue. So if you have gone through the entire process to the end, this is your child. You can't disown them. You already own them. So to that point, I'd have been taken through the briefing and all these things. I believe you should have developed the capacity and the ability to love that child as if they were a part of you at first. Now then going to that again, still, because it's part of counseling you go through, you should not let this child maybe know that they are not your blood through a hostile situation. You know, how you let them know. Of course, it's important to disclose to them at a certain age, at appropriate time. Let them know we adopted you because of A, B, C, D. But again, how you do it is very important, because if you do it in a very hostile way, you know, like he has done something or she has done something wrong, and then you shout at them and you're like, you're not my child, you're not doing this. You know, you create remorse in them. And that's why you find they will be objecting. I mean, they will be going against you, they become rude and all these things. But if you sit them down, explain to them the circumstances, the events, and then treat them well, of course, you've been treating them well as your children, I don't see the reason as to why, of course, they will be having any issues, other than, of course, managing the teenage issues, you know, the outburst, the anger, and all these other things in a positive way. There won't be any reason for them to, you know, to be against you or to go against you, to feel they are not loved, simply because you have done the right procedures. The problem comes when you do it the wrong way. You want to show them off. You want just to, you know, outright kind of bitterness, outright kind of rejection.
And maybe in summary, as you give your closing remarks, because we're literally being kicked out of the studio.
So basically for me is if you're going to adopt a child, know this is your child, take them in as yours. If God blesses you again, take them as your children, then treat them and integrate them because they are all your children.
All right. Your closing remarks.
I would like to pick from where he left and say, when you have adopted a child, communicate to that child as soon as is reasonably possible that they are adopted. Otherwise, there will be that ka-auntie. You know that ka-auntie?
Yeah.
Yeah, that ka-auntie who will say, mama yako hata nipatii pesa na kulipia shule expensive na we hata si damu yake, you know, there will be that ka-auntie. So I think as reasonable as possible and as soon as possible, when the child can internalize, and as you know, that's when you communicate, so that and in love. You know, if you know that you're not in a position to communicate it in love, don't communicate it at that point. Look for a certain time when first love is what will come out. You know, the child will feel that I'm being told this in love.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Your insights, your wisdom, what you've shared on this show, I deeply appreciate. And I know to you back at home, pia umeshukuru sana. We've been enlightened on so many issues, and I hope it did help you. If you are in this particular situation, I hope we did shed a light on whatever it is that you are going through. But right now, acha tuangalie tu msemo moja nikiwaambianga kwa heri, lakini si kwa heri sana. Tuko na Damaris kutoka Nairobi, Rongai, anapenda sana show, and ameweka pale #FeelGoodFriday. Thank you so much. I always appreciate you for tuning in right from the beginning to the very end. I don't take it for granted. It is Feel Good Friday. Good music, tumekupatia. Good conversations, we have delivered. And also that good information, we have, of course, given you as we should. And we'll be giving you some more at the top of the hour. Do join me for the 1 p.m. news. But for now, I want to wish you a lovely day ahead. Tukutane next week for Youth Culture Tuesdays, Lifestyle Thursdays, and Feel Good Friday. It's only about to get so much better. Kwena weekend, my name is Aziza Hashim.